Okay, so welcome everyone officially to the Fusion HCM payroll training, the day one session of this 18-hour session that we plan to have. The focus definitely will be on the US payroll because that is the most commonly implemented areas, but since we have participants from the UK and Canada, we will do our best to accommodate certain needs that are required for those legislations. Okay. So that is the objective. So before we start, let me say a few words about ERP Web Tutor. We'll spend a couple of minutes. It was launched in 2012 as a video blogging website. And since then, we have created over 600 hours of content, including some of the live trainings and a lot of self-paced training materials that we created. We have trained over 6,000 students, and that's a pretty huge number, and we have visitors from over 130 countries now. And we have helped students change careers completely from non-ERP or non-Oracle background and have succeeded in switching to Oracle ERP areas. So since you already have PeopleSoft or EBS or Fusion experience, we are absolutely certain that we can help you become really confident and successful implementers in Fusion Payroll. Okay. And one more thing, we just hit, I think, like 600,000 views on YouTube. We hope that by the end of this year or early next year, we'll hit the 1 million views on YouTube as well. But having said all of that, whatever we have done, and we will continue to innovate and motivate students with one and only one objective, that is, we will never compromise on quality. So as you can see that we have, this is our first payroll training session. You'll see some of the other videos from some other providers already out there on YouTube, but we waited and we made sure that we have all the right resources, we have the right materials, and we don't just copy materials from anywhere. We work hard and prepare our materials so that you actually get the best value of this time and the money that you spend on this training. So we'll never compromise on quality. And I know that there are quite a few participants that I have are already a long time students, and they have subscribed to many other ERP Web Tutor courses. And I welcome you all and thank you for your continued support. Okay. So with that, let's take a look at our day one agenda. What are we trying to cover for this session? We are going to do a brief introduction of Fusion Payroll, and then we will go into the application and give you a quick demo of how Fusion Payroll works, some of the prominent navigation areas, how the employee sees, things like that. So at least you get to see the application if you haven't seen how the Fusion Payroll piece looks like in Fusion. Then I think that we need to spend a few minutes at least on the functional setup manager overview. That topic, it is needed for any HCM training, especially in Fusion. We did cover that in details in our core HCM class, but we thought that we will keep this in the payroll session as well, so that at least folks who are new to Fusion can also get familiar with the basic navigations. Okay. Then we're going to get into our payroll implementation task. We're going to talk about implementation project, some of the features that we need to enable for payroll. What are the payroll roles that you need in order to configure and process, how to create additional users and assign them the roles, geography structures that is needed for US, Canada, the UK, so how that is done, how do we load the taxes so that all the tax calculations are correct. And then we'll also cover some of the common HCM configurations like the legislative data groups, cost allocation key flex field. Now Fusion is heavy with acronyms, so like this legislative data group, I'm using the full word. Going forward, you will hear me saying LDG, so LDG will stand for legislative data groups. So start getting used to the acronyms that Fusion uses, okay? And then somewhere in between, we'll take a short break so that this is a long session, so we need a break in between. So we will try to cover some of the initial topics before we go on a break. Okay. So introduction to Fusion Payroll. So before we even get into Fusion Payroll, I think it is very important to understand that why do we need to learn Fusion Payroll at this point. Okay. So let's take some of the key factors that should motivate everybody to learn Fusion Payroll at this point. So Fusion Cloud HCM implementation, especially the payroll, is on the rise. So we have 1,500 plus, is probably the numbers going up every week. Current Oracle HCM Cloud customers, and the 5-year Oracle target is 10,000 customers. So you can see the amount of opportunities that you will get. Okay, so especially if you're coming from PeopleSoft, or if you're working on EBS, I highly recommend that you start honing your skills on the Fusion Cloud HCM areas, and the moment you get the right opportunity, you should make a switch. Okay. So this is definitely the hot thing in the market right now. So Fusion Payroll had over 150 implementations in the last couple of years. You all know that Fusion Payroll was introduced much later than when the product was initially introduced, and even though it's a late bloomer, but it has matured enough to handle some of the large organizations, the complex requirements. So I know that there are some implementations that has been done for organizations with like thousands and thousands of employees, like 30,000-40,000 employee organizations have successfully implemented payroll. And there are some of the implementations going on where the organizations have over 100,000 employees. So definitely Oracle is taking this product very seriously. They are putting a lot of effort in making this product more matured. So you are going to see a rise in the number of implementations that you see every year. Okay. And out of this 150, the two of us have done 8. So you can think of the percentages, what kind of experience that we have between the two of us. Ongoing support work after implementation. So those who want, like more continued work in a single project. So this is a very stable area where clients prefer to have long-term support contract because they struggle with their users, processing payroll, and with W-2 generation, a year-end closing, a tax filing. So you'll always have opportunity to be on long-term assignments. Okay. And then finally, there's a high demand for Fusion Payroll experts. So there's definitely a shortage of qualified Fusion Payroll functional resources out there. And with all these implementations coming, there is a serious opportunity with the Big Four and also other top tier implementation partners. So with this, definitely you should be able to set yourself apart from the other Fusion HCM implementers, because not many Fusion Payroll experts out there in the market. Okay. So with that, let's get started with our introduction to actually the product. It is a rule-based integrated solution for Cloud HCM. So it has a lot of rules that are built in, a very powerful engine that calculates accurate taxes. It is highly and tightly integrated with time and labor, absence, benefits, and finance. I'm not sure about PeopleSoft. I don't have a PeopleSoft background, but I can tell you that its integration with absence and time and labor in EBS was not that solid, definitely not that tightly integrated with absence. So we always ran into problems trying to integrate absences with payroll. So it wasn't that easy. So now even now it's not that easy, but it totally integrates. Okay, so we have just done a project where we were able to seamlessly integrate absence with payroll. So that's something that we'll be able to share with you. Okay. Of course, with benefits and finance, it was integrated very well, and that still remains. And then they also have some smart dashboard tools for the payroll admin and other key payroll participants, where they can see what is going on, how many quick pays have run, how many payroll processes have been run, if there are any errors, what status they are in. So a very useful dashboard that can help the payroll managers. Okay. Now, it is supporting a lot of countries now. You can see this is where you can see the countries that it supports. So let me show you something here. So on the right hand side, so this is a task called manage features. So where you can see this, we will show you in the application as well. So the payroll is integrated with, so what happens is, so these are the different areas, like payroll is integrated with human resource, and they have something called payroll interface, but this is the area where we should focus. And this tells me that these are the different legislations for which the full payroll is available. You can see Canada is there, China, France, Kuwait, Mexico, Netherlands, Saudi Arabia, UAE, UK, and United States. And this list keeps growing, okay, with every releases. And they have this delivered payroll interface. So it says supports out of this box payroll interfaces. I think the only major provider that it currently integrates with currently is ADP. I'm not exactly sure about any other providers that Oracle has any out-of-the-box payroll interface. So what it means is that the client can decide to use the core HCM module, and then they will get the standard out-of-the-box interfaces that they can use with ADP. And these are the countries that it supports currently. So there's a lot of countries for which you, with minimal effort, you can integrate with ADP, which is definitely one of the largest payroll providers out there. Okay. It has now made the automatic retro processing functionality possible. LC can elaborate a little bit on that functionality. Definitely a lot flexible. You can define customer specific payroll process. Okay, so that functionality is also added. Okay, so any questions on this page, you can type into the chat. I'm going to take a few questions at this point. I think that's a good logical point to take some questions. So based on whatever we have discussed so far. Okay, so any questions? Anybody?
Yes. Deep, I just want to know, like, when are they planning to do for India, Ireland, like how they are planning to extend this for other countries?
I mean, at this point, we don't have any timeline yet, so that is best. We can make some guesses, maybe in the coming years, but that is something that is purely in Oracle's control and on their mind on when they're going to release the full payroll functionality for the other countries.
Okay, and like payroll interface, right? What do you mean by payroll interface? That like.
So payroll interface is something where you do not process payroll in Fusion, but you send the payroll files to ADP so that they can process the payroll for the employees. So that's the payroll interface. So you send the demographic file, you send the tax file, you send the payment methods file, the costing file to ADP, and then ADP processes the payroll and pays the employees. Okay.
Okay, got
it.
For
some other countries that it might not be necessarily ADP, but if the file contains anything, it's generic enough for, in theory, any local payroll provider to be able to read and load the information from the payroll file.
Yeah, go ahead.
Aldeep, what kind of differences can be expected with reference to configuration whenever these countries are launched?
We will have to see that. I mean, at this point, since those countries are not there, I cannot tell you where the configurations are going to differ. But at least we can take, like let's say Canada, UK, because that's where we have participants from. So we will try to get some of the setups related to those countries and show how the differences are. So that's the best we can do at this point.
Okay.
Okay. So Nisha has a question. You're welcome. Is Fusion Payroll now a robust product which is fit for purpose? For years it wasn't. I totally agree. And then I think it is at this point, it is pretty robust. Elsie, what is your take on this?
Definitely much better than it was before. It still has his glitches here and there, but I think it's overall much better, most robust. We have implemented in various type of businesses, so we have been able to handle all the requirements so far. It is much better than it was before.
That sounds good. One other question related to that. You say you've implemented in various businesses. Are the clients happy at the end of a project or 6 months on, or are they not so happy?
I think that depends on the implementer, on who is implementing.
That's true, and the product.
Yes. So I think like based on what, my experience is, we were able to fit all the requirements, maybe with some with configuration, some with certain amount of workarounds. The product still has some limitations when it comes to multiple assignments, and especially when it comes to multiple assignments and integration with Fusion Financials. So there are some limitations there. Hopefully in release 13, it is going to come, some of the integrations with multiple assignments. But other than that, we were able to meet most of the requirements with some reasonable workarounds.
Yeah, and Oracle itself has been very proactive in hearing the users out, and anything that it's a real issue, they have been accommodating either by providing a workaround or providing solution on a next batch. Especially like formulas are not calculating correctly or anything like that. They have been very helpful in the way that they are handling the SRs and managing the new features.
Sounds good.
Okay, so, no problem. Mohammed has a question. Which ADP software is the interface available? I think that the interface is agnostic of the ADP software. So most ADP versions, I know that ADP has different versions, should be able to get and read the file and get whatever it needs to process payroll. I mean, I have worked on multiple projects without payroll implementation as well, and with some twists and turns to the delivered interface, we were able to provide what ADP needed. And those were all different ADP versions or flavors of ADP. So yes, definitely we will cover retro processing functionality. We will dedicate a chunk of the training's time towards payroll processing. So I think we will spend like 40% of the time doing the processing and different functionalities of processing, how it is done, because it is different from EBS. And I don't know, I'm sure it's different from PeopleSoft as well. Okay, so let me go ahead and mute everybody again, and let's continue with the session. And again, we will take questions after we get to another logical point. Okay. So at this point, we're going to see how Fusion Payroll works, some basic view of the application so that you get the first look at how the Fusion setups are, how they just look on the screen. Okay, we are not going to talk about the setups right away, but we will see the different setup areas and also from an employee self-service standpoint, how that looks. Okay. Okay. So we talked about the payroll dashboard. This is one of the areas where the payroll manager sees where they can see the different statuses of the tasks, the different payroll process flow name, you're going to see this, see us use this terminology called payroll flow, payroll checklists, and definitely LC is going to cover those topics in a lot more details in the next sessions. Okay, but this is the dashboard. Not every administrator uses it, but this is definitely a nice place to see, get a quick look on what is going on in the organizations in terms of the payroll processes. Okay. And then this is the payroll management areas. So when you have the payroll, appropriate payroll roles as the payroll admin or as the payroll manager, when you go into the payroll setup areas, you will see this following task icon that you will see. So one is the checklist, then you have payroll calculation. So checklist is where you can see all the payroll processes that you have submitted, okay? And everything, it's going to be called payroll flow. So here you can find all the processes that you have submitted. The payroll calculation is the area where you can submit and run your quick pay, and you can also access some of the configuration areas like, you know, creating elements, managing fast formulas. So that kind of configuration tasks are also available under payroll calculation. Then you have payment distribution. Some of these tasks that come under payroll calculations you might see under payment distribution as well. But this is the area, I believe, where you can see the banks and bank account related setups. So the banks and the bank accounts are very much mingling between the cash management module and the payroll module. They are shared, truly shared. So as the payroll manager, you might have to add additional banks and bank accounts. This is also very useful when it comes to employees selecting the bank branch from a dedicated list rather than creating their own banks. You know, they're just entering the bank branches manually. This definitely avoids a lot of data entry errors, so that the employees don't have to type in their bank routing number, which is the branch number, and they can choose from the existing list of branches. So HR or the payroll can maintain this list, and that can be accessed from the payment distribution area. Accounting distributions, all the costing related information can be accessed from this accounting distribution. And we will go into the application and we will see all the tasks available, okay? And these are for the regulatory and tax reporting purpose. And this administration is also something that has certain tasks that you will see on other areas as well. Now I'm going to explain a little bit more when I go into the application about how the roles overlap. One role has certain set of tasks. You can have another role which also has certain shared tasks. So based on what role you have, you will see certain tasks under each of these areas, okay? But this is primarily the payroll areas, and we are going to navigate back and forth between these different areas as a payroll implementer and also as a payroll manager, okay? And then next we have the employee view. This is how the employee sees their pay slips, and they can manage their bank accounts. So this is the tab that is the payroll tab on employee self-service. When they go into the payroll tab, it takes them to the pay slips area where they can see their payroll run and pay slips. You can see this is the little icon which will open the PDF. They can view their pay stubs. On the right hand side, they have something regarding the payment methods, the personal payment methods, and they will see the different payment methods right there. And then if they click on manage, it will take them to the manage payment methods, and they can add additional payment methods if they wish to. And when you click on the payment methods, you will see that what some of the additional details about the payment method, whether it's a direct deposit or it's a check, what is the name, and they can select a bank account, they can create a new bank account, and they can also split the percentage how much they want to deposit in that particular account, okay? So now we have one more questions I saw on the chat. So So Faisal has a question. So can we add additional report under the dashboard? Yes, absolutely. We can add reports on the dashboard, and we have covered that topic in details on our Fusion HCM technical training, where you can configure the dashboard. That's something that you want to explore. And can we control how many payment methods an employee can enter? So another question that Faisal has. Elsie, can you answer that? How can we control the number of methods an employee can enter?
No, we can't. Once you open for the employees can enter as many as they want.
Okay. Yeah, because one of our recent clients, they requested that employee should be able to view but not able to edit. And we had a very difficult time implementing that, because some of these pages that you're seeing, they're all driven by roles. So taking away one role might impact something else. So it became a very difficult task. And even with page customizations, we were not able to achieve 100% of what they were asking for. Okay. Okay. Faisal has some more questions on this. Can we remove the lookup for payment type? Let's say, can we remove the lookup for payment type?
No. So this was another requirement we had in another client. We cannot. So the thing is that as a default, when we are creating the payroll, we can only default, the default payment method can only be check. So then check becomes an option on my payment method types. So there's no way for us to remove.
Yeah, so I think we are now seeing similar requirements. So we got this exact same requirement, I remember, Elsie. Yeah, Faisal, so unfortunately that is something that we could not do. So check was also available. Okay, and exactly to accommodate that, one of our clients decided that the employee should not be able to add through self-service, because they did not want people to enter a check as an option. Okay.
Yeah, I have another of our clients that they decided to just allow them to enter whatever they want, but then they audit with a report to see if somebody has selected check.
Okay. Yeah, so that's why you can have that audit report that if somebody has added a check. So if that is something that we can add to this environment, that report maybe, so that everybody can benefit from that. Okay. Yes.
We can add approval. So that's another workaround. We can add approval to the transaction, and if a transaction comes with a check, you can reject. That's another option.
Excellent. Okay. So I think we had some very good Q&A sessions. So let's move on. So now we're going to go to the application, just go to a quick walkthrough of the payroll management areas and also the employee self-service areas that we just saw in the screenshot. Okay. So I'm logged in currently as one of the super users, so I have all kinds of access. But what we're going to do is we're going to give you appropriate roles so that you can use it for configurations and also for payroll processing. Not every user account will have entire access, just to simulate what you're going to face in your project, right? So like we said, we are going to give you the configuration user, which will have access to the payroll areas. So these are the different tasks that we saw on the top on our slide: checklist, calculation, distribution. So let's go to any one of them. And clearly you can see that one of the advantages over EBS, I'm not sure about PeopleSoft, is that you don't need to close a form, you don't need to go to the navigator. You have access to all the tasks right here. So it doesn't matter where you are still able to access and easily navigate to some of the other configuration areas. Okay. So this is the payroll checklist areas, and you can see that some of the tasks that are available, you can submit a payroll flow which is to actually run the payroll. Then you can submit a process or a report, and then you can manage some of the flow patterns. So once we get to those topics, we will see what each of those means. But for now, what you should understand is that this is the area where you can find the payrolls that you have processed. Could be a quick pay, could be a full payroll. Do you, by any chance, is there anything I can search for, LC, right now here?
Just hit search. You will see everything.
Okay. So you can see that all of these are there. So some of these are the generate pay slips. This is probably a quick, so this is a quick pay. The naming convention is very important because you need to refer to this flow names exactly the way you have entered. So we always recommend the clients to adopt to a specific naming convention so that they don't just randomly enter the flow names, okay? Because you have to refer to those flow names. So here you can see that these are the difference. So if you have familiarity with even EBS or PeopleSoft payroll or overall, payroll in general, you can see that this is a quick pay. This is for making the EFT payments, for generating pay slips, archival. So all of that you can find, okay? The next tab is the, so before we get there, I have one more question. Let's quickly take a look.
Yes, so we can do EFT payments for any quick pay or any off cycle. Most of the clients right now are not using check, so they are doing EFT for all payments. I think like my last 3 clients, they don't even have a check option. So anything that they, a leave payout, severance, termination, quick pays for any off-cycle reason, they're generating EFT files.
So the next area is the payroll calculation area, and if I go into this task, I can see a lot of these tasks, and you can see that, like I was mentioning, that some of these tasks overlap. So when I was on the checklist task, you can see that I saw the submit a payroll flow and submit a payroll process, and you can see that even under the payroll calculation, you have the similar tasks. And I believe that this is the area, the payroll calculation area is where you have most of the tasks. You can access most of the tasks from this payroll calculations. Not just from a payroll processing standpoint, you can see that these are the payroll processing standpoint. You can see calculate quick pay. You can access the employees element entries, the payroll relationships for the employee. So if you're a payroll person, you don't have to go to person management. You can directly access the payroll relationship and element entries from the payroll areas, okay? Somewhat like our fast path. It's not exactly the same, but somewhat like the fast path that used to be. And then you also get access to the process results. And then you can see some of these configuration items. You can create elements, element classifications, balances, payroll definitions, I believe fast formulas. So all of these are available, okay? Now some of these tasks may or may not appear for all users depending on what roles they have, okay? If the payroll manager is not a super user, which means, so in Fusion we have something called the implementation consultant role, which is more of the setup role, they may or may not see all these tasks. So you can explore by logging in as the payroll manager. So you will get access to an account who is an employee and the payroll manager, and we will assign the payroll admin and payroll management tasks and not the setup tasks or the role for that user, and you can log in and see the differences between what a regular employee who is a payroll manager has versus a setup user, what are the differences that they have, okay? Payment distribution, let's take a look at the tasks available here. I'm sure there are some overlaps. Again, you can see that you can still submit your flow, submit your process, you can still access the payroll relationships, payment methods, which was there under payroll calculations. You can view the payroll process results. You can also manage third parties, organization payment methods, which are defined or associated at the payroll level. You can also manage the banks, the bank branches and bank accounts that can be accessed from the payment distribution task or areas. Okay, and let's take a look at accounting distribution and what kind of tasks we have here. Same, this is common. You can view the payroll results. You can see there's a lot of common tasks. You see that, right? So the payroll costing, this was not there on, I believe, on any of these tasks, right, Elsie? The payroll, the managed costing is only under accounting distribution, right?
It's only, yeah, managed costing is only under person management or here?
Correct. So managed payroll relationship, I believe, was there. So managed payroll relationship is nothing but where you associate the payroll with the employee. Okay, whether it's a bi-weekly payroll, semi-monthly payroll, what kind of payroll this employee has. So in EBS, it used to be on the assignment screen, what just the payroll name. Here we have something called payroll relationship. This is a separate page where you assign the payroll to the employee. Okay. And then the costing, as we know, is where we define and associate what kind of costing, if at all, we are defining the costing at the employee's assignment level, that this is what we can access and enter the employee's costing. So don't get too, I'm not trying to get too deep into some of these areas because we will cover those in details. The idea of this session is to, just make sure that you understand that what are the different areas and how you can see that what kind of tasks are available in what areas, okay? And of course, when we get to the setup and maintenance or the functional setup manager, you will see that some of these tasks are also available from the setup and maintenance. But once you get into the payroll module, you are implementing payroll, you tend to navigate to this area because you get everything in one place. Okay, and you also can review the journal entries from these areas as well. Okay. But you need to have the financial modules, the financial implementation in place for this. And you have costing that you can set up at different levels, job level, position level, department level, very similar to EBS. So that can also be done from this area as well. Okay. Take a look at the regulatory and tax reporting. So this is, I don't think that we have used this as much in any of our implementation. Again, we can access the payroll flow, the process of report, view payroll results. So some of these are component group rules, calculation value, calculation information. These are the only distinct areas, and also object groups. So we will talk about object groups later, but these are the only different tasks that's available under this regulatory and tax reporting. Okay. And then we have the administration. So you can explore. Again, we will cover all of these tasks that we will need for actual payroll processing. And you can see that this is also very much similar to the tasks that we have already seen on some of the other areas. Okay. So one thing that you have is the batch loader, which is the payroll batch loader, similar to our batch element entry that we had in EBS. So this is a nice Excel functionality that you can use to upload elements, banks. A lot of things can be uploaded to the payroll system using the PBL or payroll batch loader. So that's the primary area for the batch processing. Okay. So with that, I think we have covered what the payroll manager or payroll administrator is going to see. So let's take a look at some of the questions. So there's a question on the restriction for PBL, still 5,000 rows. Any enhancement to that in release 12, Elsie?
No, I read something, but I still think that we still have the same restriction.
Okay. And let me tell you, so this instance that you are seeing, this is release 11 so a couple of days, so on the 11th, so which is Tuesday. So this instance will be upgraded to release 12. So for all the duration of the training, you will have access to release 12. Okay. So it is scheduled to be upgraded on the 11th, which is 2 days from now. Okay. So you will definitely get access to the latest and the greatest. So that is from payroll manager standpoint. So we just wanted to make sure that you're familiar with how the payroll configuration areas look like. Now let's take a look at from the employee standpoint. So let me log in as the employee. And you will get access to all these user accounts so that you can see how things are different. So let's take a look at from an employee standpoint before we get to the Q&A. So employees can access their information from this personal information area. And you can see that this is something that we were showing on the screenshots. So this is the payroll tab, which we are interested in for now. And under the payroll tab, this is exactly what we saw. So this is where they will see all their pay slips, right? And I'm going to click on this little icon here that will open their pay slips. This pay slips can be, this layout can be modified to change the logo. This is out of the box, a lot better than what it used to be in EBS, okay? So we have some more questions. So Elsie, can you take the questions? So there are two questions, one from Newman and one from Mohammed. Elsie,
it's possible to restrict the sub. Yeah, I'm reading it. It's possible to restrict the sub menu under every menu. I haven't tried it. I don't think it's possible. This is related to the role. So depending on the role, I think you still have, I mean, you see it on the menu, but you don't have access to it. But just to remove from the menu, I honestly haven't tried it. Had you, Ardeep?
No, we have. I mean, so far all the role customization that are most commonly requested are the employee role and the line manager role. So those are the two roles which are definitely customized in all implementations to meet whatever the client needs.
Yeah, but when we have customized roles, the option on the menu is still there. It's just that you don't have access. You know, when you click, it doesn't go anywhere. But it's still, you know, a line on the menu.
Yeah, I haven't tried customizing, or I haven't even come across a requirement where the client has requested for customizing the payroll role or the HR role.
Yeah. In the time of termination, if it's possible to remove the EFT, yes, you can do, you know, do an end date on the EFT, or let's say you have a term employee and you need to do a quick pay. At the quick pay time, you can change the, similar as we did in EBS, that we could override the EFT to check on the prepayment. We can also do it here. So you have the possibility to just end date the EFT at the employee record, or just at the moment of the termination, substitute his EFT for a check. I haven't, no, we haven't programmed it. There's no way we can run a concurrent to do that. I mean, in any case, we can maybe have a report and then do it through PVL, so we can do it for everybody.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, so the question was, it has to be done manually, cannot program it. So that's what Mohammed's question was. So no, the answer was, at this point, there is no straightforward way to program it. Okay. So this is the pay slip. Okay, one more question. Similar to Mohammed's question, can we by default set the W-2 to be mailed even if the employee has selected to view online via document of record?
So on the W-2s, we have two options: one to view it online and one on paper. And when it's on paper, what it will allow you is just to print it, but it won't, you know, mailed automatically. Once printed. You have to, put it on an envelope and, send it out.
His question is, let's say employee only selected online viewing. But even if the employee selected online viewing, HR will still have access to viewing the payslip and W-2s and
Correct. So everything, yes, HR can update, but even if the employee is terminated, then HR can print those and send them over mail whenever they know it's a terminated employee.
Okay, so let's go back to the slides so we can take, yeah, that's not possible to automate that.
Yeah.
Okay, so going back to the slides again. So we're going to start talking about the functional setup manager, and this could be a slight repeat for somebody who has already worked on other implementations, but for catering to the larger audience, I will spend a little bit of time on the functional setup manager so that everybody is at least familiar with the terminologies that we will use as a part of this. So what is the functional setup manager? Okay, so this is basically how I would like to define it. It is one area where you can perform a lot of setups. So it gives access to the implementer to perform setups, and everything that you can do, that you can think of as a part of an implementation, you can consider that as collectively calling the functional setup manager. That's how I treat it. It's not one navigation, it is not one action, it is not one link. It is a collection of all the setup tasks that an implementer does. Okay, so with that, and it also helps you to track whatever you have done, and it will also provide you an end-to-end guided process for managing your functional setup projects. Now what that means is that if you see this diagram, this is the standard life cycle of your implementation. You plan, you configure, you implement, you export, import, and you do your transactions, and you maintain. So that is the complete implementation life cycle that you will have, right? So when you plan, what do? You get started, and then we will see something called offerings. You will create your implementation project. You will, when you create an implementation project, it will have different tasks, and once you configure, you'll be able to export the tasks from your project from one environment, and you can import it into another. I'm going to, this is more matured, this exporting from one environment to and importing to another one. It is a lot more matured in release 12, but still there is a human element to it, so we tend to trust our own brains and how we do it, rather than exporting, at least until up to this point. I don't know, Elsie, if you have ever exported and imported any payroll configurations. I know that it is done a lot for compensation and benefits, but I doubt even now we will do it to that extent for payroll. But that functionality is there, very useful for compensation and benefits, but I'm not sure if that's the same.
The new, so originally the PBL, it's able to allow you to move elements, but it had an issue. So on this release, and I'm personally working with Oracle to do some testing on new options to move elements from one instance to another. But that's so far the only thing that we can move.
Okay. So all of these, so configuring the offerings, setting up the projects, so everything is a project and task based in Fusion. So it, instead of trying to find out like in EBS that, yeah, Faisal, just a minute, we will unmute you, give us 1 minute. So what will happen is in EBS, you have to assign the responsibilities. So as a new person, you would have to figure out on your own which responsibility to go to do what kind of configuration. So here it is a completely project task driven. So you create a project and you tell the system what you want to implement. I want to implement payroll and HR, and it will build a project with appropriate tasks so you know exactly what steps to follow, which comes after what, right? So that's where this whole functional setup manager becomes very handy, okay? So we will go into the application and see a little bit more. But before that, I think Faisal has a question. So let's unmute him. So where is Faisal? Yeah, Faisal,
Hey
you are
guys.
actually unmuted. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you very much. So my question is kind of adding on to what Elsie was just saying, that let's say you have like a lot of elements that you've created during UAT in one pot, right? And I know there is that functionality where we could move it from one pot to another, and it hasn't really been good because certain times, certain input values are missing, certain formulas are missing. So are we saying that it's a bit enhanced in release 12, or is it the same issue as it was in release 10 or 11?
So in theory, it's getting enhanced. I am in the process of just testing a prototype that Oracle is about to release. So I will know in a few weeks if it's worked better or not. Honestly, I haven't used it before because it was not that good. So on all my previous clients, I did the movement manually.
Yeah, that's been kind of what's been ideal for me too. But on a bigger implementation where you have many elements, it's been kind of painful to like recreate them every time. So that's why I was just curious if that's been enhanced. But yeah, we could come back to it, if your testing's been successful about it.
Yes. Yeah, I will know in a couple of weeks.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. So let's get used to the FSM. So again, it's one of the acronyms that I'm going to use. Functional Setup Manager. I'm going to say FSM. So far we have learned legislative data groups will become LDG. Functional Setup Manager will become FSM. Okay. So first what we have is something called offering. So offering is at the highest level of grouping of Oracle Fusion applications. Those who have already implemented are probably familiar with it already. So this is something that we must do before we start an implementation. So anytime we get a pod, which is the environment, which has no implementations, nothing, it's a blank pod, then we need to configure the offering. And this is depending on what kind of licenses that the customer has with Oracle. Accordingly, we will turn on the offering. Okay. So workforce deployment, compensation management, these are some of the examples of the offering. So this kind of sits at a higher level over the module. So if you think of an EBS, so we had core HR, self-service, payroll, benefits. So these are the modules, okay? In Fusion, we have something on top of that where we can say that it's workforce deployment, whether this is a grouping of modules that you can have at a higher level, okay? So that's our offering. Then you have options. With this, we can safely relate them as the modules itself, okay? In Fusion, offering in general includes a set of core functionality, set of optional modules, which are called options. So you can have workforce deployment, and we will go into the application to see what are the different options each offering has. And then depending on the licenses and depending on what the customer uses, you want to turn on the options that the clients will use, okay? Say, for example, we have compensation management as one of the options. And it can have one of the offerings, but it will have multiple options like individual compensation, workforce compensation, and total compensation statements, okay? So these are the different options available under compensation management offering. Okay? Now the client does not want to use total compensation statement for now, okay? I don't think there's separate licensing for this particular example, total compensation statements. It usually comes as a part of the compensation management offering. But if the client decides not to use it, you can disable this option. So it's more flexible, and it allows you to set up the environment in such a way that you only get access to the setup areas that you need. Okay, you don't get access to everything. Okay, so that's something that worth considering. So that's the options. And when we go to the application, I think we will get a better understanding. Okay. Then we have features. So feature is a functionality that is part of an offering or an option that identifies a rule for specific business. We can turn on some help, some common reference objects. So when we go to the application and see what are the different options available for a feature, then we can show it to you. It's not something that we pay very close attention during any implementation. All we need is the offering and the options, and we just make sure that we are able to turn on the help so that you can turn on the help and see the help for every pages. Okay. So for a payroll implementation standpoint, what we need to make sure that we have the payroll, which is an option. So right now, what is workforce deployment is the offering, and it has payroll as an option. Okay, so we need to make sure that we enable this for our implementation, and you can explore these. So we will use something called implementation project, and we will see this in the application. And this is something that you can use for your reference, but it's best learned when we go into the application. So you don't want to spend too much time on the deck. So let's go to the application, and let's try to understand what happens when you first get into the application or first go into an implementation. Again, this could be repetitive for people like Fawan, you are already, Faisal, you are already implementing, but it's definitely need to spend a few minutes for the rest of the audience. So when you first get the instance provisioned, right? So Oracle will make sure that there's an admin person. So whoever is the main contact person, usually from the client. So they provision the user account, and then that person will create a user account, a super admin user account for the implementation team. And then that person is going to come into the application and make sure that the appropriate offerings and options are enabled. Now, what I said is that the FSM, or the functional setup manager. So you get to that area by going into this setup and maintenance task. Okay. So when I go there, first thing I will see that these are the different offerings that I have. Okay. And a lot of these offerings you will see are now kind of redundant. Like you see this obsolete price management, obsolete supply chain. So a lot of obsolete offerings you'll also see here. Okay. But let's focus on the ones that we need. So what we need is something called workforce deployment. So let's focus on the ones that are HCM related. So we have workforce deployment. What is this? Okay. And then you have this workforce development. Okay. So deployment is more from a maintenance standpoint, employee maintenance. That's why it says workforce deployment. Workforce development is more from talent. So you're developing your workforce, you're managing the compensation, so that kind of stuff. So that's why you have your talent management module, performance management module, goals management as a part of workforce development. Okay. Whereas what we need for our payroll training is something the workforce deployment offering. So you can see that you will see here that it is provision, and it is you need to enable it. Make sure that you are enabling the options and offerings that the client is licensed to. Do not just turn on everything, because then it's going to get into some licensing legal issues with Oracle. So let's go to the setup.